Kang Hyun stared at the star map floating in front of him. After 20 years of charting the galaxy, he had never seen anything like this. A huge empty space sat right in the middle of the mapped region. Not empty because there were no stars, but empty because someone had marked it as forbidden. Sector X7. Navigation prohibited by Galactic Council Decree 2847, he read aloud. The words made him feel cold. His fingers moved across the control panel, trying to get more information. Every time he tried to access data about that region, the same message appeared. Access denied. Classification level Omega. Kang Hyun had high-level clearance. He could see military secrets and diplomatic files, but this sector was locked, away from everyone. Lee Soo walked into the navigation room carrying a cup of hot tea. She was young, maybe 30 years old, with bright eyes that always seemed curious about everything. As a xenoarchaeologist, she studied the remains of old civilizations. She looked over Kang Hyun's shoulder at the display. "What is that blank space?" she asked. "I wish I knew," Kang Hyun replied. "The computer won't tell me anything about it." Lee Soo set down her tea and pulled up her own workstation. Her specialty was ancient history, so she had access to very old star charts. She began searching through databases that contained maps from hundreds of years ago. "Look at this," she said after a few minutes. An old star map appeared on her screen. "This chart is from 400 years ago. See this area?" She pointed to a section that perfectly matched the Forbidden Zone. "It shows human colony worlds. Here, dozens of them." Kang Hyun felt his stomach tighten. Everyone knew about humans. They had been one of the first species to develop faster than light travel. They had spread across many star systems, building colonies and trading with other species. Then about 400 years ago, they had simply vanished. No one knew what happened to them. The official records say humans went extinct during something called the Great Silence, Lee Soo continued. But if they all died, why is there old territory still off limits? That was a very good question. Kang Hyun had studied galactic law. Usually when a species went extinct, their former territory was opened for colonization after a reasonable waiting period. But human space remained forbidden. Not just restricted or protected, but completely forbidden. "Maybe we should ask someone," Lee Soo suggested. The next day, their ship docked at Harmony Station, a massive space station that served as a diplomatic meeting place. Representatives from dozens of species came here to trade and negotiate. Park Jin, their diplomatic liaison, had meetings scheduled with several alien ambassadors. Park Jin was good at his job. He was friendly, but not too friendly, respectful, but not weak. He knew how to get information without seeming too curious. Today, he was meeting with the Velthari, a species known for keeping detailed records of galactic history. The Velthari delegation consisted of 3 tall, thin beings, with silver skin and large black eyes. They moved gracefully, almost floating as they walked. Their leader, Ambassador Veltek, greeted Park Jin with the traditional gesture of respect. "We are pleased to discuss trade agreements," Veltek said in perfect galactic standard language. The meeting went well at first. They talked about shipping routes and cargo manifests. Park Jin waited for the right moment, then casually mentioned that his ship's navigation system had found some interesting gaps in the star charts. "Oh, you mean the old human sectors," Veltek said. Then he stopped talking. His large black eyes seemed to grow even larger. "Yes, those areas," Park Jin said carefully. "We were wondering why they remain uncharted." The 3 Velthari exchanged glances. They began speaking in their own language, their voices becoming whispers. Park Jin understood some Velthari words, and what he heard made his blood run cold. "The Watchers," one of them whispered. "Too dangerous," said another. "The price of looking," the third one added. Ambassador Veltek turned back to Park Jin. His usual calm expression was gone. He looked scared. "We do not discuss those regions," he said firmly. "Trade agreements only." "But surely you have some information about what happened to the humans," Park Jin pressed. "The humans are gone," Veltek said, his voice shaking slightly. That is all anyone needs to know. We suggest you update your navigation system to avoid those sectors entirely. The meeting ended quickly after that. Park Jin returned to his ship with more questions than answers. He found Kang Hyun and Lee Soo in the research lab, surrounded by data files and star charts. Any luck with the ambassadors? Kang Hyun asked. They're scared, Park Jin replied. Really scared. They mentioned something about watchers and the price of looking. When I tried to get more information, they ended the meeting. Lee Soo looked up from her computer screen. I've been researching shipping records and navigation logs. I found something strange. In the past 400 years, at least 30 ships have attempted to chart human space. 23 of them never returned. And the other 7? Kang Hyun asked. They came back, but their crews were damaged. The medical records are classified, but I found some basic information. The crews were found in a catatonic state, alive, but completely unresponsive. Like something had scared them so badly that their minds just shut down. Park Jin sat down heavily. What could do that to experienced space crews? I don't know, Lee Soo admitted. But there's more. I cross-referenced the dates when these ships attempted to chart human space with galactic political records. Every time a ship disappeared or returned with a damaged crew, the Galactic Council immediately passed new restrictions about approaching those sectors. Kang Hyun pulled up the current navigation warnings. The list was long and specific. Ships were forbidden from approaching within 50 light-years of any former human world. Long-range sensors were prohibited from scanning those systems. Even radio telescopes were banned from pointing in that direction. These aren't just navigation restrictions, he realized. They're designed to prevent anyone from even looking at human space. Lee Soo nodded. It's like the entire galaxy has agreed that some things are better left alone. That evening, the 3 of them sat in the ship's observation deck, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there in the direction of the Forbidden Zone were the remains of human civilization, but everyone was too scared to go and see what was left. What do you think happened to them? Park Jin asked quietly. Disease, maybe, Lee Soo suggested. Or war with some unknown enemy. Kang Hyun shook his head. If it was disease or war, there would be records. Survivors would have escaped to other systems. This is different. It's like the humans didn't just die or leave. It's like they became something else. Something scary enough that the entire galaxy refuses to go near their old homes, Park Jin added. They sat in silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Lee Soo spoke up. I want to know the truth, she said. Whatever happened to the humans, whatever is in those forbidden sectors, I think we have a right to know. The galaxy is hiding something from us, and I don't like being kept in the dark. Kang Hyun felt the same way, but he also felt afraid. His experience told him that when the entire galaxy agreed on something, there was usually a very good reason. Still, his curiosity was stronger than his fear. If we're going to investigate this, he said slowly, we need to be very careful. No official requests. No logging our research in the ship's computer. If the Galactic Council finds out what we're doing, they might decide we're too dangerous to let live. Park Jin looked at his 2 friends. They were talking about defying the most serious prohibition in galactic law, but they were also talking about uncovering one of the greatest mysteries in known space. Where do we start? He asked. Lee Soo smiled for the first time that day. I have some contacts in the underground information trade, people who deal in classified documents and forbidden knowledge. If anyone knows what really happened to the humans, they will. And I can use my diplomatic access to quietly research the histories of other species, Park Jin added. Maybe the Velthari aren't the only ones who know something about the Watchers. Kang Hyun nodded. I'll start analyzing navigation hazard reports from ships that operate near the edge of human space. Even if they're not allowed to enter those sectors, they might have detected something unusual from a distance. As they made their plans, none of them noticed the small observation drone that had been watching them from outside the ship. The drone belonged to the Galactic Council's Internal Security Division. It had been monitoring their conversation, recording every word. Somewhere in a secure facility, an alarm began to sound. A computer analysis program had detected forbidden keywords in their conversation. Within hours, their names would be added to a watch list. Their communications would be monitored. Their movements would be tracked. The galaxy had spent 400 years keeping the truth about human space secret. They were not going to let 3 curious researchers expose that secret now, but Kang Hyun, Lee Soo, and Park Jin didn't know they were being watched. They went to sleep that night, excited about their investigation. They had no idea that they had just taken the first step down a path that would lead them to the most terrifying truth in the galaxy. In the Forbidden Zone, something seemed to respond to their curiosity. Deep in the dark space between the stars, ancient sensors registered the presence of T. Dr. Yoon Mi floated through the empty corridors of the Void Seeker, her helmet light cutting through the darkness. The ship had been drifting dead in space for 3 months before a patrol found it. From the outside, it looked perfect. No damage. To the hull, no signs of battle. But inside was a different story. The Zilani exploration vessel had carried a crew of 200 when it left port 6 months ago. Their mission was simple: conduct a routine survey of mineral-rich asteroids near the edge of human space. They were supposed to stay at least 50 light-years away from the Forbidden Zone, but something had gone wrong. "Dr. Yoon, you need to see this," came a voice through her radio. It was Kim Do, the team's technology specialist. He was in the ship's main bridge, examining the control systems. Yoon Mi pushed off from the wall and glided toward the bridge. The zero gravity made movement easy, but it also made the silence more unsettling. Her team had been aboard the Void Seeker for 6 hours, and they still hadn't found any survivors. The bridge was a mess of flashing warning lights and open access panels. Kim Do was connected to the main computer, downloading data files. His face was pale behind his helmet visor. "What did you find?" Yoon Mi asked. "The crew didn't die from system failure or loss of atmosphere," Kim Do replied. "According to the medical sensors, they all died from cardiac arrest. All of them. At the same time." Yoon Mi felt her heart skip a beat. All 200 crew members had heart attacks simultaneously? That's what the data says, but there's more. The medical computer analyzed their stress hormone levels in the hours before death. The readings are off the charts. These people weren't just scared, they were experiencing pure terror. Choi Hai joined them on the bridge. She was a military analyst, trained to investigate hostile encounters and combat situations. Her job was to determine if the Void Seeker had been attacked by an enemy force. "I've examined the entire ship," she reported. "No weapons damage, no signs of boarding, no evidence of hostile aliens. The crew was found at their duty stations, as if they just suddenly died while working." Yoon Mi tried to make sense of what they were learning. A healthy crew of experienced space travelers had all died of fright at the same moment. But what could scare an entire ship's crew to death? "Kim Do, can you access the ship's logs? I want to know exactly what happened in the hours before they died." Kim Do's fingers moved quickly across his interface. "I'm downloading everything now. The main computer has about 70 hours of recorded data from their final voyage. They spent the next 4 hours reviewing the Void Seeker's records. What they found was disturbing. The ship had been conducting normal mineral surveys for weeks. The crew was relaxed and professional. Everything was routine until they reached the edge of the Forbidden Zone. "Look at this," Kim Do said, highlighting a section of the navigation log. 5 days before they died, the Void Seeker detected unusual energy readings coming from human space. The captain ordered a closer investigation. The ship's captain had been Zelmar, a veteran explorer with 30 years of experience. His recorded log showed he was curious about the energy readings, but also careful to follow regulations. He ordered the ship to maintain a safe distance while conducting long-range scans. "Here's where it gets strange," Kim Do continued. The energy readings weren't coming from just one source. They were spread across multiple star systems throughout human space, and they were moving. Choi Hai leaned closer to examine the data. "Moving how? Like ships traveling between systems?" "No," Kim Do replied. "The energy signatures were moving between planets within individual solar systems, but the movement patterns don't match any known spacecraft technology. They're too fast and too unpredictable. Yoon, Mai studied the readings. The energy signatures were massive, larger than anything produced by known civilization. They seemed to appear and disappear randomly, as if they existed only part of the time. What did the crew think they were looking? Sargon, she asked. Kim Do pulled up the ship's scientific reports. The science officer, Velnara, theorized they were observing some kind of natural phenomenon. Maybe energy beings or plasma formations. But listen to this audio log from 2 days before they died. The voice of Velnara filled the bridge. She sounded confused and frightened. Captain's log, day 63. The energy readings are getting stronger. We're maintaining our distance, but our long-range sensors are picking up more detailed information. What we're seeing doesn't make sense. The energy signatures appear to be artificial structures, but they're changing shape constantly. They seem to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The recording continued with Velnara's voice becoming more strained. I have never seen anything like this. The structures appear to be cities or installations, but they violate basic principles of physics. They seem to be bigger on the inside than on the outside. And there are things moving in them. Things that shouldn't exist. Yoon-mi felt a chill run down her spine. What kinds of things? Kim Do fast-forwarded through several hours of logs until he found another recording. This time it was Captain Zelmar speaking, and his voice was tight with fear. Day 65. Against my better judgment, I've authorized the use of our most powerful telescopes to observe the nearest human world directly. The energy readings suggest there might be survivors down there. If humans are still alive, we have a duty to help them. There was a pause, then the captain's voice returned, barely above a whisper. We've made visual contact with the planet's surface. I don't know how to describe what we're seeing. The cities are still there, but they're wrong. The buildings seem to shift and change when we look at them directly. The streets form patterns that hurt to look at. And there are inhabitants. They look like humans, but they move in ways that humans can't move. They seem to exist in several places at once. The final log entry was recorded just hours before the crew died. Captain Zelmar sounded like he was fighting panic. Day 66. We should never have looked. The things on the planet's surface have noticed us. I don't know how, but they know we're watching them. Our sensors are detecting energy patterns moving through space toward our position. We're trying to retreat, but it's too late. They're coming. The recording ended with the sound of alarms and crew members screaming. Choi Hai was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke in a careful, controlled voice. Dr. Yoon, I think we need to examine the ship's sensor logs from those final hours. If something approached the Void Seeker from human space, there might be evidence of what it was. Kim Do accessed the ship's external sensor array. The data from the final day made no sense. The sensors showed space around the ship filling with impossible geometries. Objects that existed in more than 3 dimensions. Patterns of energy that formed shapes the human mind couldn't process. The sensors were malfunctioning, Yoon-mi said hopefully. They couldn't have been recording actual data. I ran diagnostics. On the sensor array, Kim Do replied. All systems were functioning normally. What the sensors recorded was what was actually there. They spent the rest of the day analyzing the Void Seeker's data. The picture that emerged was terrifying. The human worlds weren't empty. They were inhabited by things that had once been human, but were now something else entirely. Something that existed partially outside normal space and time. We need to report this, Choi Hai said finally. Report what exactly? Yoon-mi asked. That human space is inhabited by impossible beings that can kill with fear alone. Who's going to believe us? The Galactic Council will believe us, Kim Do said quietly. I think they already know. That's why human space is forbidden. Not because the humans are dead, but because of what they became. As they prepared to leave the Void Seeker, Yoon-mi made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. She ordered Kim Do to copy all of the ship's sensor data, including the visual recordings of the human worlds. She told herself it was for scientific research, but deep down she knew the truth. She was curious. She wanted to see for herself what had terrified an entire crew to death. That night, alone in her quarters aboard their research ship, Yun-Mi activated the visual recordings. For just a moment, she looked directly at images of a human world, through the Void Seeker's telescopes. What she saw was beautiful and horrible at the same time. Cities that existed in impossible dimensions. Beings that moved like humans but weren't limited by human physics. Architecture that seemed alive and aware. And eyes. Countless eyes looking back at her through the recording. Eyes that somehow knew she was watching even though the recording was months old. Yun-Mi screamed and shut off the display. But it was too late. The images were burned into her mind. She would see them every time she closed her eyes for the rest of her life. More importantly, something had seen her looking back. Deep in human space, ancient minds that had once been human registered a new observer. Another curious soul had looked into their realm. They made note of Dr. Yun-Mi's existence and filed her name away for future reference. The Watchers were always watching, and now they were watching her. Admiral Xin-Wu stood in the secure conference room deep beneath the Galactic Council building. The room had no windows and no recording devices. What happened here would never be officially documented. Around the table sat the most powerful leaders in known space, and they all looked frightened. "We have a problem," Admiral Xin-Wu began. 3 weeks ago, Dr. Yun-Mi and her team investigated the Void Seeker incident. Since then, 7 council members have reported the same nightmare. Council member Thexvar, a reptilian being from the Outer Rim, spoke first. "The dreams are identical. We see vast cities that exist in impossible dimensions. Buildings that change shape when we look at them, and always there are eyes watching us. The nightmares started the same night Dr. Yun-Mi filed her report," added Councillor Velthera. "That cannot be a coincidence." Admiral Xin-Wu had read Dr. Yun-Mi's report. It was classified at the highest level, accessible only to Council, members and senior military commanders. The report described the final voyage of the Void Seeker and the horrible discoveries the investigation team had made. But it also mentioned that Dr. Yun-Mi had viewed the visual recordings directly. "Dr. Nam-Su, you've been studying the quantum mechanics behind these incidents. What have you learned?" Dr. Nam-Su was the galaxy's leading expert on dimensional physics. She had spent her career studying the fundamental nature of space and time. Now she was trying to understand something that defied everything she knew about reality. "The evidence suggests that humans didn't simply disappear or die," she began. "They evolved. But not in any biological sense we understand. They appear to have transcended the normal boundaries of three-dimensional space." She activated a holographic display showing complex mathematical equations. "Based on the energy readings from human space and the testimony of the few survivors who have encountered these entities, I believe humans have become multidimensional beings. They exist simultaneously in our reality and in dimensions we cannot perceive." "That's impossible," protested General Carthon. "Living beings cannot exist outside normal space-time." "Until recently, I would have agreed with you," Dr. Nam-Su replied. "But the data from the Void Seeker suggests otherwise. The humans have found a way to expand their consciousness beyond the limitations of physical reality. They exist as collective minds spread across multiple dimensions." Oh Kyung, a former military communications officer, cleared his throat. "There's something else the Council needs to know. For the past 5 years, I've been monitoring unauthorized transmissions from human space. Messages that shouldn't exist." "Admiral," Xin-Wu turned to him. "What kind of messages?" "Quantum encrypted communications that arrive before they're sent. The messages contain information about events that haven't happened yet. Anyone who attempts to decode them completely goes insane, within days." Oh Kyung activated his own display, showing wave patterns that hurt to look at. "The messages appear to be warnings. They describe threats to galactic security, invasions that will happen, disasters that can be prevented. But the information comes with a terrible price." "What kind of threats?" asked Councillor Velthera. "Unknown entities from outside our galaxy. Beings that exist in the spaces between dimensions. The messages suggest that these entities view our three-dimensional space as we might view a two-dimensional drawing. They want to enter our reality, but something is preventing them." Dr. Nam-Su suddenly looked very pale. The humans. The humans are preventing them from entering our dimension. That would explain the energy readings we've detected around human space, Oh Kyung continued. The multidimensional beings that were once human are acting as guardians. They're maintaining barriers that keep these outer entities from invading our galaxy. Admiral Shin Woo felt the weight of this revelation. You're saying that humans transform themselves into multidimensional beings specifically to protect the galaxy from invasion? That appears to be the case, Dr. Nam-Soo confirmed. But there's more. The process of becoming multidimensional beings requires giving up everything that makes them individually human. They retain their memories and their purpose, but they exist as collective consciousnesses. They sacrifice their individual humanity to become eternal guardians. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans hadn't disappeared or died. They had transformed themselves into something beyond normal understanding in order to protect everyone else. This explains the Watcher Protocol, Admiral Shin Woo said finally. Several council members looked confused. The Watcher Protocol was classified beyond their security level. Admiral Shin Woo had hoped never to reveal its existence, but the current crisis left him no choice. For 400 years, the Galactic Council has maintained a network of automated monitoring stations around human space. These stations don't just keep ships away from the Forbidden Zone. They monitor dimensional stability and watch for signs of outer entity intrusion. He activated a galaxy-wide display showing hundreds of small stations positioned around the former human territory. The Watcher Protocol costs more than our entire military budget. We've told everyone the stations are there to keep people away from dangerous human ruins. The truth is, they're early warning systems. If the barriers around human space ever fail, we'll have maybe days to evacuate entire sectors of the galaxy. Counselor, Dexvar stared at the display. The humans are protecting us from something so terrible that we built hundreds of monitoring stations just to watch for signs that their defenses might fail? The outer entities exist in dimensions we can barely imagine, Dr. Nam-Soo explained. If they ever break through into our reality, they would consume everything. All life, all matter, all energy. The entire galaxy would be absorbed into their dimensional space and cease to exist as we know it. Oh Kyung nodded grimly. The intercepted messages make it clear. The humans aren't just protecting their former territory. They're protecting all of us. The barriers they maintain extend far beyond human space. They've created a dimensional shell around our entire local galactic region. But why the nightmares? Asked Counselor Velthara. Why are council members experiencing shared dreams after the Void Seeker investigation? Because Dr. Yun Mi looked directly at them, Admiral Shin Woo replied. When she viewed the visual recordings of human worlds, she made contact with the multidimensional beings. That contact created a quantum entanglement between her consciousness and theirs. The nightmares aren't random dreams. They're communications, Doctor. Nam-Soo pulled up her analysis of the nightmare reports. The dreams all contain the same warning. The barriers are weakening. The humans need help, but they can't ask for it directly. Direct communication with their multidimensional forms would drive normal minds insane. So they're communicating through dreams and nightmares, Oh Kyung added. It's the only way they can share information without destroying our sanity. Admiral Shin Woo looked around the table at the frightened faces of the galaxy's leaders. The question is, what do we do with this information? Do we tell the public that their safety depends on beings they can't understand? Do we explain that humans sacrifice their individual existence to become our guardians? The public would panic, General Carthon said immediately. If people knew that our entire civilization depends on multidimensional beings maintaining barriers against cosmic threats, there would be widespread hysteria. But we can't ignore this, Counselor Velthara argued. If the barriers are weakening, we need to find ways to help. Dr. Nam-Soo raised her hand. I've been working on theoretical solutions. If we could find a way to reinforce the dimensional barriers without directly contacting the human entities, we might be able to help them maintain the defenses. What would that require? Admiral Shin Woo asked. Massive quantum generators positioned at strategic points around human space. The energy output would need to be precisely calibrated to strengthen dimensional walls without interfering with the Guardian's work. It would be the largest engineering project in galactic history. How many people would need to know the truth? General Carthon asked. Thousands, Dr. Namsu admitted. Engineers, scientists, military personnel. We couldn't hide the true purpose of the project from everyone involved. Admiral Shin Woo considered their options. They could continue to hide the truth and hope the human guardians could maintain the barriers indefinitely. Or they could begin the long process of preparing the galaxy for the terrible reality of their situation. There's another consideration, Oh Kyung said quietly. The intercepted messages suggest that the outer entities are becoming more aggressive. They're testing the barriers more frequently. The Guardians are under increasing pressure. How long do we have? Admiral Shin Woo asked. Based on the pattern of dimensional fluctuations around human space, I estimate we have maybe 50 years before the barriers begin to fail significantly, Dr. Namsu replied. After that, we would have perhaps 10 years before complete collapse. The room fell silent again. 60 years seemed like a long time, but for a project of the magnitude Dr. Namsu was describing, it wasn't nearly enough. We begin immediately, Admiral Shin Woo decided. We start with small projects, research stations positioned near human space to study dimensional mechanics. We slowly expand the program, bringing in more people as needed. We tell them we're studying. Captain Baek Jun had commanded Watcher Station 17 for 3 years without seeing anything unusual. The automated monitoring station orbited a dead star at the edge of human space, its powerful sensors constantly scanning for dimensional anomalies. For 3 years, the readings had been stable, boring even. Then, at 0347 hours on a Tuesday morning, every alarm in the station began screaming at once. Baek-jun rushed to the main control room, his coffee spilling as he ran. The display screens showed energy readings unlike anything he had ever seen. Massive power signatures were moving throughout human space, jumping from system to system in patterns that made no sense. Report, he commanded as his night shift crew scrambled to their stations. Sir, we're detecting massive dimensional fluctuations across 17 star systems, reported Lieutenant Yu Hana. The energy levels are 10 times higher than anything we've recorded before. Are the barriers failing? Baek-jun asked, his mouth dry. No, sir, the barriers appear to be strengthening, but something is causing them to become more active. Baek-jun studied the readings. For 400 years, the Watcher stations had recorded the same basic patterns. Low-level energy emissions that indicated the presence of the human guardians, but nothing dramatic. The entities seemed to be dormant most of the time, maintaining the dimensional barriers through passive presence rather than active intervention. But now something had changed. The Guardians were moving, communicating with each other across vast distances, and pouring enormous amounts of energy into their protective systems. Get me Admiral Shin Woo immediately, Baek-jun ordered. While they waited for the connection, Baek-jun reviewed the sensor logs from the past week. The unusual activity had begun gradually, just small increases in background energy. But over the past 72 hours, the readings had grown exponentially. Captain Baek-jun, Admiral Shin Woo's voice crackled through the communication system. What's your status? Sir, something has awakened the Guardians. They're more active than we've ever recorded. I think they're responding to a threat. There was a long pause. Are you certain the barriers are holding? Yes, sir, but barely. The dimensional walls are under tremendous stress. Whatever the Guardians are protecting us from, it's pushing harder than usual. Understood. Continue monitoring and report any changes immediately. The communication ended, leaving Baek-jun with more questions than answers. He had been briefed on the true nature of the Watcher stations when he accepted command. He knew about the human Guardians and the outer entities. They held back. But he had never expected to see them in active combat. On the other side of the galaxy, Li Wan was experiencing her own crisis. As a xenobiologist studying evolution and adaptation, she had been assigned to analyze the biological implications of humanity's transformation. Her research station was positioned closer to human space than any other scientific facility. Her instruments were detecting something that should have been impossible. The entities in human space were not just becoming more active. They were evolving, adapting to meet a growing threat. The quantum signatures are changing, she reported to her research team. The Guardians are developing new defensive capabilities in real time. Her assistant, Dr. Park Yun, looked confused. How can multidimensional beings evolve? They already exist outside normal space-time. They're not evolving in a biological sense, Li Wan explained. They're restructuring themselves at a fundamental level, becoming more efficient at manipulating dimensional barriers. It's like watching natural selection happen in fast forward. She showed him the data from the past month. The energy patterns coming from human space had grown more complex and organized. What had once been random background emissions now showed clear structure and purpose. They're learning, she realized. The Guardians are adapting to counter new threats from the outer entities. Meanwhile, in the diplomatic chambers of the Galactic Council, Young Min was dealing with an unprecedented situation. An impossible message had arrived through official channels written in perfect galactic standard and claiming to be from a human representative. The message was simple, but terrifying. We request immediate diplomatic contact. The barriers are under assault. We require assistance. Young Min stared at the message for the 100th time. It had been delivered through normal communication networks, but that should have been impossible. The human Guardians existed in multidimensional space. They shouldn't be able to use standard communication technology. More disturbing was the content of the message. It demonstrated detailed knowledge of current galactic politics, including information about recent council decisions that were highly classified. No isolated human colony could possibly know such things. How do we respond to a diplomatic request from beings we can't safely communicate with? Young Min asked his supervisor. Very carefully, came the reply. The message included coordinates for a meeting point at the absolute edge of human space, a location that was technically still in normal space but close enough to the dimensional barriers that the Guardians could maintain contact without driving the diplomats insane. Dr. Park Yeon, the galaxy's leading expert on quantum mechanics, was brought in to analyze the proposed meeting site. What she found was both fascinating and terrifying. The coordinates point to a region where normal space-time begins to break down, she explained to the emergency council session. The dimensional barriers are thin there, allowing limited interaction between our reality and the Guardians' multi-dimensional existence. Is it safe? Admiral Shin Woo asked. Define safe, Dr. Park Yeon replied. Brief contact might be possible without permanent mental damage, but extended exposure would be catastrophic for normal minds. Jung Min volunteered to make the journey. As the galaxy's most experienced diplomat, he felt it was his responsibility to attempt communication with humanity's descendants. I'll go too, Dr. Park Yeon added. Someone needs to monitor the dimensional effects and ensure the meeting doesn't tear a hole in space-time. As preparations for the unprecedented diplomatic mission began, Captain Baek Jun reported increasingly disturbing readings from Watcher Station 17. The Guardians are mobilizing, he reported during his daily briefing with Admiral Shin Woo. Energy signatures suggest they're gathering forces from across human space and concentrating them at specific points along the dimensional barriers. Gathering. Forces for what? The Admiral asked. I think they're preparing for war, Baek Jun replied quietly. The truth was even worse than he suspected. Deep in multi-dimensional space, the entities that had once been human were indeed preparing for the largest battle in galactic history. The outer beings had found weaknesses in the dimensional barriers and were probing them with increasing aggression. The Guardians had spent 4 centuries maintaining their defenses through passive presence, but now they would need to actively fight to keep the barriers intact. The coming conflict would require all their power and possibly more help than they had ever requested before. In the space between dimensions, ancient minds that remembered being human held council. They discussed strategy in languages that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. They made calculations using mathematics that normal minds couldn't comprehend, and they worried. For the first time in 400 years, the Guardians were not certain they could win. The outer entities were older than galaxies and hungrier than black holes. They had consumed entire realities before. The only thing that had stopped them from entering this dimension was the sacrifice of humanity and the barriers they maintained. But the barriers were weakening. The outer entities were adapting to counter the Guardians' defenses. Soon, active combat would be necessary. The message to the Galactic Council had been a desperate plea for help. The Guardians needed the younger races to step forward and join the fight for reality itself, as Young Min and Dr. Park Yeon prepared for their journey to the edge of human space. Neither of them fully understood what they would find there. They expected to meet with strange beings that had once been human. They did not expect to find themselves in the middle of a cosmic war that would determine the fate of everything that existed. At Watcher Station 17, Captain Baek Jun watched his instruments as dimensional storms began to rage across human space. Energy levels spiked and fell in patterns that suggested massive conflicts happening in dimensions he couldn't perceive. "Sir," Lieutenant Yuhana called out, her voice tight with fear. "I'm detecting movement beyond the barriers. Something is pressing against the dimensional walls from outside our reality." Baek Jun studied the readings. For just a moment, his instruments showed him a glimpse of what existed beyond the barriers. Things so alien and vast that his mind refused to process them completely. The outer entities had arrived in force. The final battle was about to begin. Fleet Commander Song Hwan stood on the bridge of his flagship as reality began to tear apart around them. Space itself was bending in ways that hurt to look at. Stars appeared and disappeared. The laws of physics seemed to be breaking down as his small diplomatic fleet approached the coordinates provided by the human guardians. "Commander, we're detecting massive dimensional fluctuations ahead," reported his navigation officer. "The space-time distortion is unlike anything our sensors have ever recorded." Song Hwan nodded grimly. Dr. Kim Yun, the quantum physicist standing beside him, was monitoring the effects of the dimensional breakdown on the crew. She had developed theoretical protection against multi-dimensional perception effects, but theory was very different from reality. "How are the crew holding up?" he asked her. "The mental shielding is working so far," Dr. Kim Yun replied. "But we're approaching the limits of what normal minds can handle. If we get much closer to the dimensional barriers, the protection won't be enough." Young Min, their diplomatic representative, was studying the translation protocols they had developed for communicating with multi-dimensional beings. The task seemed impossible. How do you negotiate with entities that exist in 17 dimensions when you can only perceive 3? "Commander Song, we're receiving a transmission," announced the communications officer. "It's coming from the coordinates ahead, but the signal is strange." "Put it through," Song Hwan ordered. The voice that filled the bridge was human but wrong somehow. It spoke in perfect galactic standard, but the words seemed to come from multiple directions at once. "Welcome, younger siblings. We have been waiting for you." Young Min stepped forward. "This is Young Min, diplomatic representative of the Galactic Council. We received your message requesting assistance." "Yes. The barriers are failing. The outer entities have found ways to exploit weaknesses in our defenses. We require your help to maintain the dimensional walls." Song Hwan felt a chill. "What kind of help?" "Your people must understand what we have become and why. The galaxy must choose between ignorance and survival." The transmission continued, and the voice became clearer, more focused. "We are sending a representative to your vessel. Do not be afraid." Before anyone could respond, the space in front of them began to shimmer. A figure materialized on the bridge, appearing gradually like a photograph coming into focus. It looked human, but Song Hwan's eyes couldn't quite process what he was seeing. The figure seemed to exist in multiple places at once, constantly shifting between different states of being. "I am Commander Yu Sun," the figure said. "I was once human like you. Now I am something more." Young Min tried to look directly at the figure but found it difficult. His eyes wanted to slide away as if his brain was protecting itself from information it couldn't handle. "You said the barriers are failing," Young Min said carefully. "What does that mean for the rest of the galaxy?" Commander Yu Sun gestured, and suddenly the bridge filled with images, not on screens but floating in the air around them, visible from all angles simultaneously. The images showed vast cosmic battles happening in dimensions beyond normal perception. The outer entities have been testing our defenses for centuries, Yu-sun explained. Recently, they have become more aggressive. They have learned to coordinate their attacks and exploit weak points in the dimensional barriers. Dr. Kim Yoon studied the images with scientific fascination mixed with terror. What are these outer entities? Beings older than galaxies. They consume realities, absorbing entire dimensions into themselves. They see your three-dimensional space as you might see a drawing on paper. Flat, limited, easy to manipulate. The mock images shifted, showing what appeared to be massive creatures moving through spaces that existed between dimensions. They were so alien that Song Hwan's mind could only process them as abstract shapes and patterns. 400 years ago, our people discovered ruins left by a previous civilization, Commander Yu-sun continued. A species that had faced the same threat you now face. They left behind warnings and technology, but they had failed to stop the outer entities. Dr. Han Sol, a xenoarchaeologist who had joined the mission, spoke up. What happened to that previous civilization? They were consumed. Their entire reality was absorbed into the outer entity's dimensional space. Nothing of them remains except the ruins they left as warnings. Commander Yu-sun waved his hand and new images appeared. Ancient structures on distant worlds, covered in writing that seemed to move and change when looked at directly. When our people found these ruins, we understood what was coming. The outer entities had found your galaxy and were preparing to invade. We had perhaps 50 years before they would breach dimensional barriers and begin consuming everything. So you transformed yourselves to stop them, Young-min said, beginning to understand. We made the ultimate sacrifice. We gave up our individual existence, our physical forms, our humanity itself. We became collective consciousnesses capable of existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Only by becoming like the outer entities could we hope to fight them. The images around the bridge showed the transformation process. Humans entering strange machines that seemed to tear them apart and rebuild them as something else entirely. Cities full of people simply disappearing as their consciousness expanded beyond physical limitations. Entire worlds volunteered, Commander Yu-sun said sadly. Billions of people chose to give up everything they were to become guardians. Parents left their children, children left their parents. We all became part of something larger. Dr. Kim Hyun was recording everything, her scientific instruments struggling to process data that shouldn't exist. How many of you are there? We are one and we are many. Individual identity becomes meaningless when consciousness exists across multiple dimensions. But we retain our memories, our purpose, our love for the life we chose to protect. Song Hwan felt overwhelmed by the scope of the sacrifice humanity had made. You've been fighting these entities for 400 years? Not fighting exactly. Maintaining barriers, creating dimensional walls that keep the outer entities from entering your reality. But the effort is enormous and constant. We have never rested, never stopped, never allowed the barriers to weaken significantly. Until now, Young-min said, until now, the outer entities have evolved new strategies. They probe for weaknesses, coordinate their attacks, and apply pressure at multiple points simultaneously. Our barriers are holding, but barely. Commander Yu-sun gestured again and the bridge filled with new images. These showed energy patterns flowing between star systems, massive constructions that existed partially in normal space and partially in other dimensions. We need the younger races to help us reinforce the barriers, not by transforming as we did, but by providing energy and resources from normal space. Your technology, properly modified, can strengthen the dimensional walls from this side of reality. Dr. Kim Yun studied the technical specifications that appeared in her mind, rather than on any screen. This would require the cooperation of every major civilization in the galaxy. The energy requirements are staggering. Yes, the galaxy must unite or face consumption. There is no middle path. Song Hwan considered the implications. If we refuse to help, what happens? The barriers fail within 50 years. The outer entities consume your galaxy piece by piece until nothing remains. If you help us, the barriers can be reinforced and maintained indefinitely. And if people can't handle the truth about what you become? Young Min asked. Commander Yu-sun seemed to smile, though his multi-dimensional form made it difficult to tell. Then you must find ways to help them understand. The alternative is extinction. The transmission began to fade as the dimensional stress on Commander Yu-sun became too great. We will maintain contact through dreams and visions as we have been doing. But time is short. The outer entities grow stronger with each passing day. Wait, Dr. Hansol called out. Why did you wait so long to ask for help? We hoped we could protect you without involving you. We wanted the younger races to develop naturally, without the burden of cosmic responsibility. But that luxury is over. The war for reality itself has begun. Commander Yu-sun's form became more transparent. Tell your people the truth, all of it. The galaxy deserves to know what protects them and what threatens them. Only through understanding can they find the courage to stand with us. The figure disappeared, leaving the bridge crew alone with the weight of revelation. Around them, space gradually returned to normal as their ship moved away from the dimensional barriers. Song Huan looked at his crew. They had come seeking answers about the forbidden zone around human space. Instead, they had learned that the survival of everything they knew depended on beings that had sacrificed their humanity to become eternal guardians. Communications, get me Admiral Xin Wu, he ordered. Yes, sir. What should I tell him? Song Huan considered the question. How do you summarize the most important conversation in galactic history? Tell him we've made contact with the human guardians. Tell him they need our help to prevent the end of everything. And tell him we're coming home with a plan to save the galaxy. As their ship departed the edge of human space, none of them noticed the small dimensional fluctuations that followed them. The Guardians were keeping watch, ensuring their new allies made it safely home. In